Thanks for joining in the Pivotal Podcast, where we talk about young adults with young adults. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Pivotal Podcast. We're so excited. Thank you so much for joining us. I am always, as always, I'm here with let me see. Oh, I did it wrong. There we go. My partner in crime, Andrea Saltel. She's up there in PA. And we have a very, very special guest joining us this time. This is Lilly Croft. Hi, Lilly.
Hello.
So Lilly is a young adult, and she's going to be, we're going to have a conversation about what it's like being a young adult in this day and age, and also trying to live a life of faith. And how does that integrate into, everyday life and in our culture? But first of all, I just wanted to just jump right in and ask Lilly. Lilly, tell us something about Lilly Croft. Pretend we have no idea who you are, and we want to know the basic details.
Well, my nickname is Lilly. I go by Lillian, or my full name is Lillian, but I'm 21 years old, and I'm originally from Wheeling, West Virginia, but I currently go to Mount Vernon Nazarene University. So yeah, I grew up in the church, and that's pretty much the gist.
Okay, do you want us to go by Lillian or Lilly?
Lilly.
Okay, Lilly. Gotcha.
Lillian sounds so sophisticated.
It really does.
I know, right?
Yeah, you should be.
I have to say something about Lilly, though. So Lilly was my roommate for an event that we did, right, with young adults, and we did not meet. That I think she was already asleep when I came into the room. Is that true?
I've had roommates.
I think so.
Yes. And so it's like you're in this room with a stranger. I'm like, I don't know what this girl's gonna be like. But she's the sweetest girl ever. And she's just so kind and so nice. So I am so excited that you're on this today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, when you said you'd be willing to do this episode, Lilly, we were just like, yay, Lilly. we were so excited. So excited. Well, we sent all of our guests the same 3 questions, but as I told Lilly, this conversation can go anywhere and about anything. So we're just going to jump right in. Lilly, tell us something about your faith journey, and how would you describe your spiritual life as it is right now?
Well, I'm a pastor's kid and technically a pastor's granddaughter too. And so I gave my life to the Lord at a very young age. I don't know. I think I might have been 8 or something like that. And I've just been following the Lord as best as I can since. And 2 summers ago, I was called into ministry, and I had no idea what that looked like. And so I actually said no to God for a couple of months. And I was like, that's not for me. My dad and my grandpa are both pastors, so I'm not going to follow in their footsteps, but I am. And so I said yes to God at Nazarene Youth Convention, the big NYI convention, and I was serving there as a college representative and intern. So then I said yes to God, and then this past January, God kind of called me more towards young adult ministry in general, which is really exciting because it's definitely a need in the church. So yeah, I'm really excited.
Yeah, awesome. In the conversations that I have, which you have been a part of, Lilly, and Andrea can definitely attest, I think we're still seeing young adult focused ministry as kind of a black hole of the church. It's kind of a desert land. There's not a lot. I'm thankful for what is going on, but there's not a lot going on. But when you think about the way that our culture is going and how people are kind of dying off or aging out or walking away from their faith, it kind of makes sense. It's the demographic almost isn't there in the church setting. I mean, obviously it's there in our culture, but in the church setting. So what are you studying now at MVNU?
I'm currently an elementary education and intervention major.
Wow. Okay.
So quite different. And I'm taking ministry classes here and there, but I also am doing my course of study through Nazarene Bible College for working towards ordination.
Wow. So you're at MVNU, but then you're also
Mhm.
like in Nazarene Bible College as well. So you're kind of
Mhm.
like you're in two different college
Kind of.
levels in a way.
Yeah.
Good
And
for you.
not at the same time right now,
Oh,
thankfully,
okay.
because that's a
Okay.
lot.
All right. Okay.
But I'm doing that like on the off seasons.
Yeah.
So
Can you talk a little bit about this whole interventionalist? Well, tell me about that. What is that?
so that's for students who like just have like educational needs, or they might have like a disability and everything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so my major is kind of two degrees in one. And
Yeah.
so when I graduate and like do all my licensure exams and everything, then I'll be able to have like two teaching degrees. So like general education, what a lot of people go through. And then intervention is like special education, or just like working with kids like one-on-one or in
Yeah.
small groups.
I love that. I'm
Mhm.
well familiar with that. My son went through school with my youngest son with an IEP, but I just never heard that term before. So I don't know if that's like a regional thing or whatever. Andrew, have you heard that term?
I have not heard that term,
No,
but
me neither.
I'm very curious because you're in school for like early ed, but now you feel this call to young adult ministry, which maybe could feel the same at some point in time. I don't know.
That's
But
true.
what was it that how did you get called to young adult ministry? Like what was happening in your heart? Like where and how does that like affect what you're studying in school now?
Well, when I was um, called to young adult ministry, I was at Third Wave, actually, like the big, like global event.
Yeah.
And um, Sam Barber was preaching on like stepping out into the water for someone. And he's just like, what's the thing that you've been talking about this week with people, and what's on your heart? And for some reason, like I immediately knew it was young adult ministry. And like it was the first thing that came to my head, and I like couldn't get rid of it. And instead of saying no to God, like the first time when he called me into ministry originally, I was like, okay, like I'm going to say yes because this is important. Um, and so then it was kind of like unclear, still is a little bit unclear of like, oh, this isn't like a youth group where it is for like teenagers and everything where you go each week, but there might be like retreats, or it just like depends. And so right now it's kind of just like going with the wind and going where God
Mhm.
is taking me in the moment. So
Mhm.
So cool.
yeah.
Have
Wow.
you I have another follow-up question, but have
Mhm.
you like in your life as a young adult, have there been people that have poured into you like and you've seen young adult ministry that's like made a difference?
Yes. So I serve as a resident assistant here at my school. And one of the people who poured into me was my resident director last year. And I was just going through some like different life changes and everything. And I think I might have told you this story like whenever we had like our first like meeting together. And basically, I just needed someone to like listen to me and hear my heart. And I was like telling different people, like my family, talking with them and saying like, yeah, these are all the things and this is why it's challenging pretty much. And they're like, yeah, like I understand that, but at least you're not in this position, or at least this didn't happen. And I totally understand where they're coming from. And they were just trying to help. But then my boss, my resident director last year, we were having our like weekly one-on-ones, and he could tell like my heart was just like really heavy on something. And he just listened to me. And then he was like, yeah, like actually that does suck. Um, so yeah, that was one of the people that like poured into me a lot, and I like saw the fruits from it, because then like I moved on from that because he pointed me back to the Lord, instead of just like me dwelling on where I was there. So
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Wow.
I mean, the empathetic listening is beautiful.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's really good.
And I think so needed, at least I'm finding in really in any human being, but especially in the young adult range. And I learned this, in student ministry as well, but now as a young adult pastor, I think most people just want somebody to hear them, somebody to listen to them, not in a patronizing way or patronizing, whatever word, whatever pronunciation, but just in a way that's like connective and empathetic and redemptive. Yeah, for
Great.
sure. So
And there's I think there's a tendency with us older adults when we see young adults to like feel like we need to fix a problem,
yeah,
to fix, yeah, like I want to fix that for you and like, give you some story of how I experienced the same thing. But over and over and over again, I feel like young adults are saying like, I just need somebody to sit with me in it
yeah,
while I'm in it
Mhm.
and listen. So,
yeah.
and that's so cool that like I'm sure it was a series of like that resident director or whoever was pouring into you
Mhm.
a series of conversations with them, but like to think that that one time of listening would like lend itself to say, hey, like I can do this for other people too. I think that's just
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah,
So
Yeah, for sure.
that is good. All right, Lily, you're 21 years old. And I'm sure you hang around with other early 20 year olds. So the next question is, what is something that you see as a common issue facing young adults?
Well, I think definitely like the need to be heard, like we were just talking about.
Mhm.
I mean, I also think that there's just like this sense of belonging that really is sometimes missed because like you graduate high school and at the church like you just go out of youth group and so then you have the choice of like you can't stay in youth group anymore but you can either like leave the church, which of course we don't want, or you can sometimes they'll have like young adult ministries or just like you just join the full church. And at my church it's like demographic is a lot older, and so just kind of like moving out of that, it's like, where do I belong? And then you go to college and you're like, where do I belong here? Because I just met
Mhm.
these people and I don't know these people.
Mhm.
Do I still belong with my high school friends? Like, how do I belong in my family and like still grow as an individual, but also like serve my family? So just recently, I feel like just being seen and feeling like we actually belong and have a like true place somewhere is something I've just been witnessing a lot. So,
Yeah, it's
do
good.
you feel like you've seen that done well anywhere in your life for young adults?
um, for freshmen at MVNU, we have like these mandatory like small groups called belong groups actually,
Mhm.
and I think sometimes like the fruit of it is really good and like you create a sense of belonging between all of you, and I think that can be beneficial for sure.
Mhm.
Have you seen it? Have you seen it in the church anywhere?
Um, Not in my area right now, at least.
Mm.
Um, and like my personal home church is pretty small, and so like we don't have like the numbers to even to create something like that.
Mhm.
But um, I've seen like mentorship programs go well, and then people see like their place there. Um, but not like a ton, not as it should be, I feel like.
Yeah.
Mhm. One of the things in our context that we're contemplating, wrestling with a little bit is how do we make the mission of the kingdom of God portable in a way that people can actually like live it out, but not in a way that's programmatic. Like, here's a script for you to follow, but more like, here are some guidelines and some tools that can help you disciple another person. And I know that that's not a new wrestle and it's not unique to my context, but in the new role that I'm still kind of like settling into and in our young adult ministry trying to figure out how do we have a discipleship effort that is both organized and organic in equal parts. So that's kind of, it sounds like kind of what you're describing when you have something on campus there that's almost like this built-in structure or framework that people are put into. Now, the tricky part is, at least outside of a college campus, the tricky part is you've got to have people who are willing to be a part of that, because everyone's got the same amount of 24 hours in a day, and it's difficult, and we've got obligations and responsibilities. And in the young adult realm, with no negative or disrespect to any of my young adults, they remind me of like eels, like slippery eels, where you're trying to like grab onto them and they're just like slipping all because they got like work and school and relationships and family and job, all the, all these things. So I feel that it's difficult to kind of nail them down and try and build a framework when they're all just kind of like slipping through my hands, so to speak, just on the schedule, like a logistic wise. Um, have you found, Lily, have you found that that freshman year thing, have you found that to be a lasting thing? Did it feel to you like a put upon thing? Did it help build a foundation for you, just as far as like spiritual community? Like, how do you feel about it at this point where you are?
Well, I'm like definitely close with my roommate, and she was part of it. And then we also
Okay.
had like a couple of other sets of rooms like in it too.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for me, like I don't really talk to the other people that were in it, but
Yeah.
that was also like 2 years ago, and I understand
Sure.
like people like grow
Yeah.
and change, and that's totally
Yeah.
fine. But
Yeah.
I am close with my roommate, so that
Yeah.
helped in that aspect.
Yeah. Let's, let's be realistic. And Andrea, I would love to hear if you, especially if you have an opposing view of this. Like, I don't need a ton of like close friends in my life. Like I think most people are probably like, if I have like one person in my life, maybe two people that I feel like I can say anything, do anything, ask anything, confess anything, and they're still going to be around. Like that's really all that I need. So Lily, I want to say to you, like, there's no need to apologize about like you have this one person. Like that's the jackpot right there. You got one person in your life that you can lean on and walk with spiritually. I don't know. Andrea, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Like I also think the older that you get, the more you realize like your capacity to hold a lot of friendships in places is hard. I
Yeah.
think like it gets hard to hold a million like really good close friendships. And so I think you start to lean into sort of the ones where you belong the most, right? Where you feel like you can be your best version of yourself. And so I do think like that's it's limiting in some way. Like you limit yourself to it because you don't have the capacity for it in a million different ways. But I
Mm,
think the other thing, and like Lily, you kind of spoke to it from your freshman year to you're a junior, right? To your junior year, so much about yourself changes,
yeah.
and you're growing as a person. And I think in young adult ministry, and I'm watching this even like you're a younger young adult, but I'm watching this in our ministry. We have it from the spectrum of like an 18-year-old, and then we've got some that are pushing 30 or a little over 30. Your like life stages and life change, and even in college, like your major changes. You just got called into ministry at your junior year. Like your life stages also change some of the spaces of belonging too. And so, as you graduate college, as you maybe start dating somebody, as I'm watching people have their kid for the first time, like I lost my job, I got a new job. Like all of those things too shake up that sense of belonging as well. So, how much can you hold in that space of friendship as your life is constantly changing like this? I think,
Yeah.
yeah, that's like it's unrealistic to think you're going to have a ton of super close relationships as your life already feels a little unstable.
Mhm.
Um,
It's true.
yeah, I don't know. That's just a thought, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I would guess that a lot of young adults resonate with that, just feeling like not a ton is nailed to the floor um, in any part of their life, because by nature, I think that 18 to 23, 25 is kind of a, I don't know, it's shifting, you're trying to settle into some kind of like steadiness or stability or something. But I also think that's part of the fun. Like that's part of like the adventure. It's anything could happen at any time. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the fun part about it too. Um, but anyway, yeah. Anyway,
So
that's good stuff.
I was going to ask you, Lily, like, as you're experiencing that and you're like searching for belonging in the spaces that you walk, like, what do you think would be most helpful from, your older adults or the adults that are in your life? Like, what would be most helpful to you as you're searching for spaces of belonging?
It's good.
Hmm. Um, I think for me, someone who like outside of my family, who's a mentor to me, like a Christian mentor, and just like is consistent and like I know that I can count on. and that I know like it's never going to be too busy if I need to call them and like chat or something. So I think just having like a mentor that's consistent would definitely help.
Yeah,
So
that's good. That's good. And that's a little bit of what I talked about, the whole organized and organic
Yeah.
um situation, but something that people feel like, yeah, I can do that. Like I think if you say to the typical like adult, like, older adult, hey, I want you to mentor somebody. I think the concept sounds good, but I think probably you're going to be like, well, okay, but like, how do I do that? And so that's kind of what I'm chasing after right now.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask a follow-up question too to that. Like, for that person, an older adult that might say, well, like mentorship, like what does that look like? Or, consistency, what does that mean? Like, what would you say that looks like for you? Is that like a weekly meeting? Is that checking in? Is it inviting you to come get groceries with them? Like, what do you feel like would provide what you need in that space?
I think in this season of my life I am now, like having something consistent would be a little too challenging just because like my schedule already feels like way too busy to add something else on. So just having someone that would like text me regularly and be like, how are you actually doing? Rather than like the typical response of like, oh, I'm good, like how are you doing in all aspects of your life? And are you actually balancing things well? And most importantly, like how are you in your walk with the Lord?
Mhm.
Um, so making sure like my relationship is with God is in check and I'm just like overall a healthy person, just like
Yeah.
texting and checking in.
It's
It's
awesome.
good. It's good. I feel like we can kind of just pause here for a second. And we could go to like ChatGPT and or Copilot or whatever, but let's put our three brains together. And if we can come up, like, let's brainstorm some, like, what are some good questions along the vein of how are you doing? But how can we maybe, what's a better question than that? Because that's just like super generic and it's easy to be like, oh, I'm great, and like just go on. But what would I have a friend of mine who asked me how my heart is doing, just like as an example, how is your heart? And I've asked people like, how are you in Jesus today? So can we like brainstorm a couple of questions? Because that might be something useful to people who listen to that. Like, oh, I never thought about
Mhm.
that. I'm gonna, if I really want to go deeper with somebody, here's a better question to ask.
Yeah.
Hmm. Something that like we'll share sometimes like in our belong groups that we had freshman year or just like nowadays it's just like in general is sharing like a high low and a buffalo. And
Mhm.
so like the high is like a good thing that's happened in your week, a low is like a prayer request or something you're struggling with, and then a buffalo is just like a funny story or something that like happened that week that's worth a giggle.
That's funny. Yeah.
So yeah, maybe just asking like what is going on in your week, like your high low buffalo. I think that could be
Good.
helpful.
Good. Andrew, what do you think?
I was thinking about the question, something along the lines of like, what's really energizing you right now?
Mm,
Like, where do you find life? What's giving you life right now?
yeah.
And also, what's really draining you? What are the things about your life that are weighing heavier on you, or take away more energy in your life than add to it? That
Mm,
kind of thing.
yeah.
So, um, or even you could ask if you're not asking what things, I think you could ask, what relationships in your life are really filling your bucket. Like,
Hmm.
tell me about some relationships that are just like bringing a lot of good to your life. And then what relationships in your life are like depleting your bucket? How can is it for a college student, the response might be, well, my roommate is draining my bucket. There's no water left. Or it's a prof that I'm really struggling in that class. I think if you could ask questions like that and questions that are open-ended, I think is really important.
Yeah.
Um, that anybody could answer in a thousand different ways.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
good. One of the questions that I have asked that I feel like it's just a little too heavy. I don't know. Maybe that's not the right word. But one of the questions that I have asked is like, what is the thing or the person that you have allowed to get between you and God?
Mm.
It could be a goal, it could be a job, it could be a relationship, and even an aspiration. It could be a habit, it could be a sin, that they're struggling with. But that's another one. That may be a little bit too, like it just feels like, oh man, that kind of negative. But I like yours, Andrew. I like the joy thing, like because a lot of times we don't focus enough on the things that energize us, the things that bring us joy. And as someone is coming into adulthood and young adulthood, there is this realization that like, oh, there's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot to look after. There's a lot to think about. There's a lot of, where right now we happen to be in tax time. It's like, oh, taxes. I got to pay taxes now. There's a lot of heavy things. So Andrea, I really like that about, like the what brings joy, what energizes you. And then the
Well,
buffalo thing, that's just hilarious. That's
I
a
know the buffalo is hilarious. I think another, my dad and I talk about this a lot, but I try to start meetings, a lot of times with this too, but to just talk about bright spots, before you get into anything hard. So like, what are the bright spots in your life right now? What's something God's done? Maybe who's somebody that's encouraged you?
yeah.
What's something cool that's happened? Even if it's as simple of like, my roommate brought me coffee yesterday, surprised me. Okay, that's a bright spot because our tendency, and I would say for young adults, especially when you're experiencing so much transition, so much like stuff you're trying to grasp at all the time, our tendency can be to lean to the negative. And I think before you even get into that stuff, like to talk about what is the good stuff that's happening, like it starts your conversation more full than it does like this, oh, woe is me, blah, blah, blah. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's good.
I that's always helpful for me.
Bright spots. Yeah, that's really good. Speaking of which, I can answer that. I just thought of this while you were saying this, Andrew. Like literally right before we got on to record this, my oldest son, he texted the family chat that said he got Shamrock shakes for everybody and they're in the fridge. So that's my bright spot for today. I
That's
got a Shamrock
awesome.
shake waiting for us. Today is St. Patrick's Day, 2025. That's the day we're recording. So Shamrock, that's what I would say. If we were
Oh, I'm so
conversation, I
jealous.
would be like, "Oh, Shamrock Shake is waiting for me in my fridge at home." Yeah, bless
That's
his heart.
awesome.
Okay, the last question, Lily, is: in what ways do you feel the church views or handles young adults should change?
Hmm. I think just meeting us where we're at, because honestly, with like all young adults, we're kind of just all over the place. At
Yeah,
least I am. And so like just not really having like set expectations of like, oh, when you graduate, you're going to college, and then after you do that, you're getting married and having
yeah,
kids, and like,
yeah.
like there's like that line that used to be expected. But I would just say like meet us where we're at,
Mhm.
because it might change like next week.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That's
yeah.
good. That's really good. Um, Andrea,
Okay.
anything else you want to share
Well,
or add or ask?
yeah, I still have so many questions all the time, but
Okay.
I'm just thinking about this, like if like a church or a ministry leader heard that to meet you where you're at, and you think about the trajectory of young adulthood and there being, all different stages of life, and it's not an age bracket thing. I think gone are the age brackets of like, well, when you're in your early 20s, you do this, this, and that.
Yeah.
Do you think that there is like a one size fits all programming when it comes to young adults in the church, or do you think it's more about like individual ministry with young adults?
I think definitely individual ministry, because like if you just take like different routes in each other, then like something isn't going to work for one person as it is for another.
Yeah.
And so like I know something that works for a lot of people is just like meeting at someone's house and like having dinner and just like talking about life or like playing games. So that's something that works in my area pretty well. But yeah, I think it's definitely just depending on like who you have in your ministry in front of you.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I feel like that's permission giving, Lily, to churches. Um, you know, Me and Jerry are both on staff at a church. Like we do this for a job. We work with young adults as part of our job. And I think sometimes there's this expectation. It's like if you build it, they'll come.
Hmm.
But I'm starting to see even on some of the things that we build, because young adults like the you're just constantly in transition, that even there's just different seasons where you're like, I got these young adults, we're moving towards a direction, and then something in their life changes, and now they're in a different season. And now you
Hmm.
have to like relook to go, oh wow, I feel like I'm rebuilding and we just built, So I think just like that concept of like being with people, giving them a sense of belonging, which you said earlier, and then meeting them where they're at, even if it's as simple as inviting them to dinner, it's actually permission to like not be so complicated as a church.
Mhm.
It's not
Mhm.
as complicated as we make it out to be.
Mhm.
Um, I think some church leaders need to hear that.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
That's good. That's good encouragement. And I don't know, this might be just a kind of a parallel thought. I also don't have any interest as a young adult pastor of being like the linchpin that holds everything together. Like I want to build and instill and encourage young adults to know how to care well for each other as well. Like if there's like a gathering or a get together or something of young adults and I have nothing to do with it, I'm not going to be like, "Hey, I didn't plan that program. What are you doing?" Like I would want them to like feel like they can care, for each other because like in some ways, like I'm 51 years old. I'm way far removed from, I mean, I remember my own young adult years, but I'm not a young adult in this day and age. So I can't like fully 100% relate to the things that you're facing in the society that we're in and all that stuff. But you can, and you have like, and you also don't have to have all the answers to be able to encourage somebody and walk with somebody either. So, I mean, I do believe in mentorship. I do believe in speaking to people who are down life's road a little bit. There's so much wisdom and value in that. But I also want to create a culture where young adults, I think, Andrea, the word you were using, permission giving, I think that's a really great concept. Like, let me foster an environment where you have the permission to like care for each other, and encourage each other and walking along together. Because I mean, if anything happens to me as a young adult pastor, what are you young adults going to do? Like I was the one holding it all together and, I was the one pouring into everyone. So I don't want that, to be the way that the ministry is built.
Yeah, and it's pretty much just like kind of like training us to care for each other.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
think it's helpful.
Yeah. There's so many, I don't know. There's different answers. There's like, I think 28, 23 different one another's in scripture that were commanded. And so I feel like discipleship is really about nailing those things down, and really kind of getting good at the one another's. And there's no like age qualifier on that. That could be a 12-year-old and it could be a 90-year-old, so but yeah, that for me, speaking for like my context, I want to be about creating an a community, spiritual community where we get the one another's going, like caring for, encouraging, forgiving, all that stuff.
And I love Lily that you said training us to care for each other, like
Yeah,
helping to train us to care for each other. I think that's really, really good too, is you're fostering environments where you're modeling what that looks like so that you can turn around and you can do it for someone else.
yeah,
And that's like super tangible. And that's what the whole world's looking for. Like the world is looking, those one another's, like the world is looking for people that will do that. Like they want to experience that hope and that care and that encouragement.
yeah.
Again, like sometimes I think we make it way more complicated than what it
Right,
needs to be.
right. Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
good.
That's good. What a good conversation. Lily, thank you so much for being on this episode. We have had a blast. I learned a lot from you. I gleaned a lot. So thanks for sharing. And yeah, we definitely got to have Lily back for another
I will
future.
be Lily's roommate any day.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I agree.
Love that. Love that. That's so
Yeah,
fun.
well, thank you for having me. It was great.
Yeah. And thanks everybody for watching the Pivotal Podcast. We have such a good time with you. If you want to leave a review, if you want to like send this to a friend, anybody who's a young adult or in young adult ministry, we just want this to be an encouragement and maybe just kind of like a think tank for everybody who is or knows or loves young adults the way that we do. All right. Thanks, y'all. Thanks, Andrea.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lily.
Yep. Bye.
Thanks for joining in the Pivotal Podcast, where we talk about young adults with young adults.